Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 348. The Scouting Combine is going on in Indy, and Brian Gutekunst did talk to the media, local and national media. Remember when I said on Monday, he's probably not going to say anything about Rich Bisaccia because what can he say about him? He can't hire and fire coaches. He might not even know what's going on. He did provide some insight into the Rich Bisaccia stepping down situation last week. Just those brief pauses are two air quotes. And Gutey said they were pretty surprised by it. We'll talk about that and a couple of other tidbits from the Combine. There's a bunch of Packer stuff. We'll talk about that. The Packers are threatening their season ticket holders again. This is the second year in a row they have issued a stern warning to season ticket holders not to sell all of their tickets or they will revoke your tickets. If you can't use these tickets the way we want you to use them, we're going to take them back. And also, I didn't even know this. I guess this is the second or third year that they have released grades for individual franchises that players who played for that franchise or worked for that franchise, they can evaluate the franchise and then they release grades. And the Packers and Matt LaFleur did not grade out the best. That was released yesterday as well. We will discuss the Bucs. I don't know what to make of this team at this point. They won in the early part of the year. Then we want them to win. They wouldn't win. Then they lost a bunch. Then we want them to lose. Now they won't lose. Now they've won 8 of 10. And they get back-to-back wins after that loss to Toronto on Sunday. Remember on Monday? Boy, Monday, John. Can't trust him. He said Gutey doesn't know anything. Then Gutey did. And I think on Monday, didn't we say that by the end of this week, we could be talking about tanking again because they lost to Toronto. Miami's a losable game. Cleveland's a losable game. New York's a losable game. Well, they get wins against Miami and Cleveland, even though Cleveland had a load management night on Wednesday. He still won. So 2 wins since that Sunday loss. They're a game and a half out of a play-in tournament spot. Giannis does not sound like he'll be back on the floor tonight. Per Shams. I don't know. Shams has not tweeted about Giannis since the trade deadline. It has been a breath of fresh air. But they are on the floor against the Knicks tonight, and yeah, at this point, I don't know that tanking even makes sense, so you may as well win. We'll break that down. Badger basketball, probably their worst conference loss of the year, considering Oregon had 3 conference wins going into Wednesday, and I get it, you're on the road, you're on the West Coast, and your timeline is all off and all that kind of stuff, but that was an ugly loss on Wednesday, and I stayed up until midnight to watch the whole thing. And they lose by 14, and they're fine in terms of an NCAA tournament spot, but you had the chance to maybe get in the conversation for a 5 or 6 seed. Now it feels like you're probably going to be living in that 7, 8, 9 seed range with that bad of a loss on Wednesday. They're in Washington on Saturday, and we'll talk a little Brewer baseball as well. We have our first winning streak of the year. They were 0-4 in spring training. Now they've won 3 in a row. It has happened before. Tyler Black is playing his ass off, and he might be a solution at third base. We've talked about a lot of different people, but not Tyler Black. He has re-entered the chat, as the kids say. He is 8 of 11 in the first week of spring training. He's hit a home run, couple of triples, and a double, and he is a guy who, when he was coming up through the system, profiled as a corner infielder. Maybe he could be a solution at third base. And I do just want to touch on real quick the ABS ball strike review system. I was excited when this was implemented at the end of last year. I think I'm still excited, but as I'm seeing the practicality of it, or I guess the ABS system in motion, this might be more of an annoyance than anything because it is kind of disrupting games and it's taking a little longer than I thought it would. And now are we going to be adding time onto games after we did all this work to make the game time shorter? We'll discuss that too. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. Hit time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete intercepted. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Yeah, welcome in on your Friday morning. This is going to have to be a little bit of a quicker podcast just because This is a week, man. It's tournament week, so for the side hustles, for the basketball play-by-play that I do in Milwaukee, it's conference tournament week, so I've been calling games every night. We called games on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'll be calling a game tonight, and probably a game tomorrow, and probably a game on Sunday. Plus, we've got the St. Jude Radiothon on the way next week. I'll have an update on the podcast schedule probably on Monday. But Thursday, Friday next week is our annual St. Jude Radiothon where we raise as much money as we can to help the kids at St. Jude battle childhood cancer. But I'm on the air Thursday, Friday from 6 until 6 p. So that takes a toll on the voice. And I can kind of feel my voice going. You know, it's that time of year and everybody's sick. Is everybody sick in your building? Everybody's sick. Stay home if you're sick. Here's a public service announcement. Stay home if you're sick. I understand we all were raised with this mentality of I'll grit my teeth and get through it. Well, then you get everybody else sick. So that's happening at the office, and we've just got a lot of talking we've got to do over the course of the next couple of weeks before my wife and I go to Phoenix for vacation for spring training. So we have to wrap this podcast up a little bit quicker than we normally do just because I think I've got to save the voice. Got a game tonight, and if we are growling through that, then the rest of the weekend and next week's going to be a nightmare. So we'll try to put a cap on this. I did get an email, not on the podcast email, speaking of the play-by-play side hustle. Somebody emailed me earlier this week because I was talking about the work schedule and asked me, what is my favorite sport to do play-by-play for? So I've been doing a side hustle with a lot of different stuff, basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball. I mean, I've done a lot of different things in my day. I still think my first love in terms of play-by-play, which as a side note is that's what I wanted to do. I mean, when I was growing up and realized very quickly that I could not play sports, it's like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come, except the voice was whispering to me, you cannot play. Maybe pursue a career in podcasting. Pursue a career in podcasting. Okay. But when I was growing up, basketball was the sport I liked to play the most, even though I looked like I was injured when I was playing. Are you okay? No, that's just my style. And when I was growing up and in high school, we had a radio station at the high school we all went to, Sheboygan North High. Shout out WSHS 91.7 FM, where variety is the sound. And they let us do play-by-play. So as I realized I love sports, I want to be around sports, I can't play sports, and maybe radio is something I could do. And I grew up in the Bob Costas era and watching all the NBA and NBC stuff. And so I wanted to do that. I thought at this point in my life, at 41 years old, I thought I'd have a full head of hair and I'd be doing play-by-play for an NBA and NBC triple header on a Sunday afternoon. None of that worked out the way I thought it would, but that's okay. But that is my first love. And when we were in high school, the radio station, which allowed for us, in all seriousness, for me or for people that were into it, it allowed you incredible opportunities at 16 years old or 15 to be on an FCC-licensed radio station that was connected to WPR. But we had the ability to do play-by-play for basketball, for men's or girls and boys, men's and women's basketball. And I was allowed to do that. And as much as you wanted to do it, like how enthusiastic are you about this? As much as you wanted to do it, they would let you do it. So that is my first love, is basketball play-by-play. And if I could pick my career, even though I love doing this, and I love you guys, what do I have to say here? What do I all have to say? I love this job. I love country music. I love sports. I love talking. But if I had my pick of what I would do as a full-time job, like John Hensler Make-A-Wish, I would be doing play-by-play for the Bucks or play-by-play for the Badgers or whatever. You know, no one's going to replace Matt LaPlante, but no one's taking that guy's spot. He literally has a job for life. Like, that's his literal contract for Matt LaPlante with the Badgers, as it should be. But that would be the first thing that I would want to do. That is my favorite sport to call, basketball, by far and away. And there is just something about, even though I don't remember it much from playing in middle school or intramural basketball or whatever it was called. It wasn't called intramurals when you weren't on the high school team. What was it called? Was it called intramurals? Maybe it was. And you played like rec league. We played for Community Bank and Trust. They made us open a savings account just to join the team and get your t-shirt. But even going back to that, one of my favorite parts of sports just in general, of playing in a game or calling a game, the 20 minutes before a game, I live for that. Like, I literally, like tonight, it's a semifinal matchup, so there will be a bigger crowd. There will be a couple thousand people at this game. And as the crowd is filtering in, there's just an energy about a gym or I guess a football field or a baseball field, but it's more of a gym thing to me, where people are filtering in. It's a big game. Warm-ups are going on, layup lines, and there's music blasting. There's just something about that energy that I've always been addicted to, that like 20 to 30 minutes before a game starts. And you get more of that at a basketball game than any other sport. But I would put basketball as my number one. That's what I love to call the most. I would actually put... I enjoyed my time. We talked last podcast calling hockey in Stevens Point. I love the pacing of hockey from a play-by-play perspective because there's always action. There's always things you can describe. In fact, there's too much that you can describe. I really enjoyed that. But if I had to tier what I actually do, the things that I actually work in now, basketball would be my one. Baseball would be my two. I do love the conversational element. I like to talk. I don't know if you've noticed that. I'm a bit of a talker, a bit of a chatty Cathy. And it just allows for that. There's more space to have some fun and crack some jokes. And obviously, we were raised on euchre, so some of that seeps into your brain and trying to have a little bit of fun with the broadcast, a little deadpan. But I do love that. The one thing I hate about the baseball that I call college baseball, most of it, they are all doubleheaders because the weather in Wisconsin is horrific and the Midwest in general. So if you have a college baseball team, you only have a window from late February. All the teams go to Florida or whatever, a warm weather state. And they play 10 to 15 non-conference games over the course of a week or a week and a half. And then they fly back to where they are, and then the conference schedule starts. And the hope is when you get back from that trip in early March, like the second week of March, that the weather will be good enough that you can play a bunch of games. But you have to do doubleheaders because you only have from the first or second week of March until maybe the middle part of April. And you have to squeeze in like 60 games in 45 days. So they're all doubleheaders. And doubleheader college baseball, one game is fine, but you do a 3-hour game, and then there's a half an hour break, and then another 3-hour game, and more often than not, it's 37 degrees and windy, and you're just sitting out there miserable in the elements for the most part. I mean, you have press boxes and things. Most of them aren't heated. Sometimes you're just sitting in the stands. And that is a miserable experience for the second game. One game is okay. Football, I think, as much as I love football, what's a football? As much as I love football, calling high school or D2 or D3 college football, I would put that as my least favorite sport that I cover just because football is kind of slow. I mean, I know it is. Like, think about when you watch a Packer game. I'm doing other stuff a lot of the time. I'm locked into the game, but I've got my phone. There's other stuff. I'm checking scores and fantasy scores and parlays. You know, there's a lot of stuff you're kind of doing during the game. When you're just calling the game, you realize how much downtime there is in football and how much meandering there is sometimes. I would put that as my third sport. And I do a little volleyball, and I've done some soccer and things like that. But that's how I would rank them. But I've got some basketball play-by-play on the way tonight, so we've got to tighten this podcast up. What are we on now? Minute 13. Okay. The ship feels like it's sailed. By the way, a quick follow-up. I think we mentioned on Monday I was getting my new prescription glasses from Costco. Got the hot dog. They didn't have the mint sundae shake thing, so the one in Grafton doesn't have it yet. I'm hoping they do at some point. Maybe they do now. But they didn't have it there. I did get a hot dog, though. But I needed new prescription glasses. Costco is way cheaper than anything else I've dealt with, so I got 2 pair for about $300. Normally, that in my lifetime, that has cost me more in the $400 to $500 range. And as I mentioned on the Monday podcast, I did get my first ever pair of prescription sunglasses. And this has, guys... This has changed my life because I do a lot of driving this time of year with the side hustles, and it's bright outside, and if there's snow on the ground, you get that reflection, and it does take a toll on your eyes, and you're squinting. I can squint down to spot and dime sneaking onions. I can squint myself down to 20/20 vision. But I've had people tell me, how can you not have sunglasses for when you drive around or when it's the middle of winter and it's really sunny out and the reflections and all that kind of stuff, and I've just never had them. And from the second I put him on, it changed my life. I felt like the scene in Where the Millers, very underrated movie where the kid says, "We're getting paid." You guys have been doing this the whole time?
And you were only going to pay me $30? You're getting $30 grand? I'm getting 1,000.
Wait, you guys are getting paid?
You guys have been doing this the entire time? You guys have been wearing sunglasses this whole time? I texted my wife and said, I cannot believe the difference this has made. And she texted me back and said, yeah, she probably rolled her eyes. And then she texted me back and said, yeah, we've been telling you this for a long time. What a game changer sunglasses are. Have you guys heard of these things? So that was nice. And the hot dog was good. 10 out of 10 as always. One quick thing before we get into football. I do want to play this clip. I blogged about this week. So the Winter Olympics are done. We did the whole hockey thing last podcast. And now, because I am a curler, now the texts have stopped. The attention to curling, like we've talked about, is one of those Olympic sports where everybody seems to get into it for a couple of weeks. And then once it's over, it is gone from your brain. Out of sight, out of mind, unless you are somebody that curls. So all the people in my life that know that I curl, while this was going on, that would text you questions about, are there different scoring zones, or what's this rule, or how did the Canadian team cheat, or whatever. All those different things that were happening, that has completely dried up. Like, I can just delete those text exchanges at this point. But with curling in mind, I blogged about this. I don't know if you saw the video on Twitter. There was a group of guys, of course, I don't know where this is in Wisconsin, that put together a curling rink, like a homemade curling rink at somebody's property or at a park somewhere. And they started doing beer case curling, like 30 rack curling. And they got, this actually looks fairly regulation-ish for a curling rink. Like, the distance of it looks pretty approximate, and the size of the house and the rings looks pretty approximate. And then instead of using curling stones, they put 30 racks of beer, different varieties of beer, into baking sheets, which you just know somebody, one of those guys got in trouble for using the good baking rack or the good baking pan for this. Because everybody in their house, right? I've been yelled at for this. You've got the really crappy baking sheets and baking pans that are just beat to hell, and they've been scraped and cut, and there's olive oil burned into it, and vegetable bits on there, or pieces of steak or bacon or cookie crumble remnants. You have those that are beat up, and then you have some really nice baking cookie sheets or baking pans that you don't want to mess with too much. I guarantee you one of these dopes in this video took one of the good baking pans and used it for beer case curling and was adjudicated for it when he got home. But I love the audio. The guy that's doing play-by-play on this, as I put it in the blog, feels like Jim Nantz at Augusta on Sunday. He's kind of whispering, and it's so good.
I like the bowling crap.
Here comes Coors Light.
Wow, well done. Good job.
Nice.
Nice. I think this guy's great. That was pretty much on the center line. Now we got Miller Lite.
Pabst Light's failing.
Oh, Pabst Light, sorry. I can't imagine how long this took them to put together.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's good. That's good.
Natty Light made a nice run there.
It's kind of like shuffleboard, but
yeah,
different. Like on ice.
This has to be a Winter Olympic sport in 2030.
The Beast.
30 rack of Beast Ice. So they just go on with this the entire time. As I also put in the blog, in addition to wasting one of the good baking pans, which I have no doubt that is something that happened, you just know a couple of these guys, they look like, and my first thought was these have to be college dudes who just have a Saturday to do nothing and have been watching the Olympics, but these look like adult men. These look like guys that have actual lives and jobs and marriages and kids. I would have loved to see the conversation on a Saturday morning of, oh, can we do this or that? We've got a bunch of things we need to catch up on. Housework we've got to get done. The kids have practice. Wish I could, honey. Wish I could, but Tom's got a project he's working on, and he needs me, and this is the only day that we can do it. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll be back a little bit later. And this is the project. The project is 7 cases of beer, 7 good baking pans, and setting up a curling sheet for beer can curling. I wish I could help. I'll be back at 10 o'clock tonight. That was pretty good. That's got to be a winter sport in 2030. I thought that was a good variation on curling with all the curling conversation that had been happening. All right, let's get into the Packers. So as we talked about in the teaser, Gutey did talk to the media. We discussed this on Monday, that the Rich Bisaccia thing was a little odd. I think we can all agree it was a little bizarre the way that went down 38 days after the season concluded, after the hiring cycle has kind of ended as well. And a bunch of guys, a bunch of coaches who you might have wanted to interview had you known you had a vacancy there, those guys are off the board. And then the phrasing of stepping down as opposed to retiring or as opposed to firing, I thought that was bizarre as well. And then there's another chapter now. Gutey was at the scouting combine that's going all the way through the weekend, and he met with local reporters for about 12 minutes on Tuesday, I think, or Monday. And then he met with national media on Tuesday. And of course, like we said on the Monday podcast, because he is the first person that is going to be in front of a microphone after this has happened, the question is going to become, what happened there? Can you give us any further information as to why this all went down the way it went down? And even though I thought on Monday he was not going to give us anything, or he was going to say maybe, when Matt LaFleur talks to you guys, he can maybe provide more insight, or maybe Ed Policy. Hey, I'm going to keep beating this drum. Ed Policy needs to do a press conference. We are better than a year now since he has taken over for Mark Murphy. I guess one of the things maybe that's different about Ed Policy as opposed to Mark Murphy never met a media session that he didn't love. Mark Murphy never had a microphone. He never saw an open mic he didn't want to stand in front of, which I can also understand. So he was kind of an entertainer. He liked to chop it up and give you a little bit more information than I'm sure the rest of the board would have liked him to give. So maybe there is a difference there where Ed Policy is just not that guy. But it feels like we are more than a year now he has been the team president, and a lot of things have happened. It feels like we need a media sit-down, a Q&A that is not curated before he sits down and he knows exactly what's going to happen. Anyway, I didn't think Gutey was going to tell us anything. What Gutey told us is that it was a surprise. They were taken a little bit by surprise that this was something Rich Bisaccia wanted to do. Which begs the follow-up that nobody asked, but it begs the follow-up question, did something happen there? Was something going on behind the scenes between Bisaccia or LaFleur, a disconnect in coaching style, or a disconnect with Rich Bisaccia and maybe Gutey about players that he wanted or specific skill sets that he needed to have that special teams unit operating a little bit better than it was, which was barely mediocre even in its best year? Was there some kind of dissonance there, and Rich said, you know what, I'm done with this? I had read a report, or listened to, I think, on the Wilde and Tao show at some point, that Jason Wilde had discussed that Bisaccia, there were feelings with Rich that he had let LaFleur down, that he had been brought into this job, and it never quite got to the level he wanted it to be, so maybe he didn't see an end game here where he was going to get this special teams unit to the echelon that he wants it to be at. And perhaps he decided, you know what, I'm 65 years old, maybe there's another job out there or something else, maybe going back to college. I've read some speculation about that on Twitter, that maybe he wants to get back in the college game, which he has been so far removed from, and it feels like more people want out of that in the NIL transfer portal era than want into it. Perhaps we'll see if he does any kind of move or makes any kind of move in that direction. But I have heard some discussion that maybe he just felt like, I can't get the job done here that I want to get done, and it's time for me to move on. It's been 5 years or 4 years, and it just hasn't gotten there, and if after that time it hasn't gotten there, maybe it's not going to, and he stepped down. But something happened, right? I mean, we can all agree. Something happened there, whether it is a disagreement with LaFleur or Gutey, or it's just feeling like he can't get the job done he wants to get done. Something happened there, and even if Bisaccia did not meet with Gutey about it, Gutey did provide that insight, and he also said he's exploring other opportunities. What those other opportunities are, another follow-up question that was not asked. What those other opportunities would be, I have no idea. Is it with another NFL team? Like, is it a college team? Is it something totally disconnected from football? I mean, maybe it's just something totally different than what he has been doing at 65 years old, which I wouldn't begrudge him for. If he's got other plans, other things he wants to accomplish, fine. But what does that mean? What is other opportunities? He stepped down from the Green Bay Packers 38 days after the regular season, after another disappointing year, to explore other opportunities. What does that mean? Tell me who number 2 works for. What does that mean? Gutey did give us that, and that is going to lead to, I would think, further questioning whenever it is that Matt LaFleur will step in front of a microphone and do a media session. Does he do one after the draft? I'm trying to think. I think he does. Because on a previous podcast, we had said Gutey is going to be in front of the mic first because of the scouting combine. And because of the draft, he'll be also in front of the mic pre- and post-draft. I'm trying to remember if LaFleur does a post-draft press conference. I believe he did last year. That might have had something to do with the fact that the draft was in Green Bay. There's an element of that to it, maybe. But I do think he does. Him and Gutey both do a post-draft press conference, at least after the first round of the draft. Now, could that be different this year because the Packers don't have a first-round pick? Maybe. But we might have LaFleur in front of a microphone in 6 weeks, and that has to be the first, second, and third question. We hope at that point somebody will be hired. That's another thing that I would like to ask Matt LaFleur or Ed Policy about. Okay, Rich Bisaccia stepped down a week ago. You only have 5 or 6 weeks now into the draft. My assumption is, and again, take it from me, a podcaster, I am not someone that works in an NFL front office. My assumption would be that you would want all of your coaches and all of your training staff and all of that buttoned up by the time you are drafting players that could be utilized on a special teams unit. Does the next coach have a different idea about coverage or kicking? Does the new coach have a different idea about the style of player he wants? So this feels like, are we interviewing people? Is this on LinkedIn? Is this a job anybody can apply for? What is going on in the post-Rich Bisaccia stepping down? This happened 9 days ago. I would hope that there is something going on there behind the scenes in terms of hiring or looking at candidates or interviews or things like that, but we have no information on that either. But I did think it was interesting. Gutey did provide us that extra information of, yeah, we were surprised, and he's leaving to pursue other opportunities. And Gutey, because he gave him a strong endorsement 2 weeks ago, said we're going to miss him and we're going to miss his presence in the building. But beyond that, not quite sure what the actual story is or where we are in the hiring process here. But that was information, at least. That was something that they were taken by surprise by Gutey, by Rich Bisaccia stepping down, and he is apparently pursuing, quote, other opportunities. Couple of other Packer tidbits. They did threaten the season ticket holders again this week. This happened last year for the first time, maybe 2 years ago. It's an interesting ongoing war between the Green Bay Packers and their fans and the season ticket holders. So I've got a buddy, he'll remain nameless, but I just want to use him as an example. His family has had Milwaukee season tickets for as long as I've known him, and this is going back to college. And then his parents, who inherited the Milwaukee season tickets, his parents put him, and he's my age or a year older, I think, and he's got brothers. His parents put at least him and somebody else on the actual season ticket holder list when they were born 40-ish years ago. And that is coming up now. I think we've talked about that on a podcast. I was never put on a list. Nobody put me on a list. You just made the list. Nobody put me on the season ticket holder list for either Milwaukee or Green Bay season tickets. But if you are my age, in your late 30s, early 40s, mid 40s, and your parents did do that the day you were born, that time is coming up. That is getting to a point now where I know a lot of people who are getting mail. I think when they expanded the stadium, whatever year that was, they added that tier of seats to the top of the atrium. That opened up 6,000 extra spots, and at that time, a lot of people my age who were on the Green Bay season ticket holder list were given a piece of mail that said, hey, you can take Milwaukee season tickets right now, 2 games a year and a preseason game, or you can wait. You're close, but you can wait then for the full-on 6-game package, the actual Green Bay Packers season ticket holder package. But that's where we're at in the timeline. If somebody put you on the list 40 years ago, your time is coming up. So they already had Milwaukee tickets. And then I think both of them maybe got, at some point in the last few years, Green Bay season tickets. So they have a lot of tickets. And as I'm learning as I get older, and I learned this actually, my buddy and I forget what year it was. It was an Aaron Rodgers injury year, which probably impacted our enjoyment of this. I had a listener to B93 offer me, it must have been 2013. It was the Matt Flynn year because we watched a couple of Matt Flynn games. That was 2013. Then he came back for the He's Got Randall Cobb game, and they win the de facto NFC North Championship game in Chicago at the end of that regular season. But I had a listener who had Green Bay season tickets and offered me 4 games, or half of the total tickets. I think actually this person had Milwaukee and Green Bay tickets, so they had the full 8 games. At that time, it was 8 games before they added the 17th game. So he offered me at face value tickets. I didn't have to pay a premium. I had to pay nothing. He offered me 4 games, a pair of tickets for 4 games at face value. And I said, absolutely. So this is 2013. So I am, what am I now? 41, so 10, 31. I'm 28 years old. 28 years old. And you're telling me I can go to 4 Packer games this year? I'm a half-season ticket holder? Hell yes. And I got in contact with my buddy, and who celebrated a birthday this week. And I said, you want in on this? He said, yes. And what we learned that year at 28 years old and in the prime of our lives, if we ever had a prime, in the prime of our lives, in our late 20s, still able to bounce back from a night of drinking and still able to go out and give her till bar close and have a good time. What we learned that year is that 4 games in a single season is simply too many games. That's just too many games to go to. And I love going to Lambeau. I always have a good time. Tailgating is fun. You can't beat the atmosphere, the energy, the walk up to the stadium, the parking. People are ripping shots and eating food, and the grills are going. And it's good no matter when. I mean, it's good in September. It's really good in October, my favorite time to go. In fall, early November, the leaves are still changing colors, and you get that cool crisp, but it's not freezing cold. It's fun in winter, too. But by the time we got to the end of that year, and again, it's an Aaron Rodgers injury year, so if Aaron Rodgers is healthy and he's starting all the games we go to, and they're a 12-win team and they've got Super Bowl aspirations, maybe I have a different perspective on where we were at by the end of that. But I think I can speak for both of us when I say by the time we got to the third game even, we thought, this is just exhausting. It's a lot to get up there on time, to drink and eat all day, and then you sit there, and if it's cold, we went to a really cold game. We went to a blizzard game. That was the year they played the Steelers, and it was a blizzard by the end of the game. So dealing with that and traffic on the drive home, and you got the headache settling in. I mean, it's a lot. And after 2 games, we were good, and the third game, we thought, ugh. And by the fourth game, it was a chore. So if you have season tickets, if you have 6 games for the Packers season tickets, if you have 2 games, that to me is the perfect medium. Like if you offered me right now, you can either have Milwaukee season tickets or Green Bay season tickets for the rest of your life, the 6 games, the 2 games. I'm taking the 2 games so fast, it would make your head spin. That's 1 game a year to me is perfect. 2 games is fine. But if you have not only the Green Bay season tickets, 6 games, and you also have, in his case, the Milwaukee tickets. So you've got the full boat. You've got 8 games a year or 9 games a year in the 17-game schedule. You're never going to go to all those games. God bless you if you're a season ticket holder and you have the stamina to get through that many games, and you go to all of them and you sit in the traffic and you drink and have a good time. You do that for 8 home games over the course of a fall. So, yeah, you're going to sell tickets because not only do you just not want to go to all those games, you can also make a lot of money on the secondary market. Lambeau Field is a destination, especially for opposing fans, which Matt LaFleur has pissed and moaned about a lot. Hey, Matt LaFleur, how about you hire a special teams coach that doesn't have that unit finishing in the lower third of the league? How about we actually live by the all gas, no brakes motto? And after we do all of that, let's worry about the fact that the common man is selling his tickets on the secondary market to make a little bit of money. And yeah, a Lions fan might buy it or a Viking fan might buy it. The amount of times Matt LaFleur pisses and moans and bitches about the fact that, 5,000 Lions fans got in there. That's the reason we lost the game? Now I'm sweating. Anyway, my point is, it's a lot of games to go to, and this is also capitalism, baby, and you can make money selling these tickets on the secondary market, on Ticket King, on StubHub. You've got opposing teams that make this. If your team, if you root for the Arizona Cardinals, if you root for the Raiders, and you see the Packers and Lambeau Field, that is an away game for you. You think, oh boy, bucket list trip, go to Green Bay, go to the Hall of Fame, do the whole Lambeau Field thing in the Titletown district, and do all of it. You can make money if you're a season ticket holder. You can easily make a pretty penny on StubHub selling those tickets. So the last 2 years, the Packers have gone out of their way to contact season ticket holders and say, if we find out, now I don't know what kind of ticket Gestapo we're working with here, but they say, if we find out that you are selling all of your tickets. So that's the qualifier. I think if you go to some of the games and you sell some of the games, they're okay with that. What they're cracking down on in their minds is the fan that has all of the Green Bay tickets or all the Milwaukee tickets or both, and they're not going to any games. They're selling all of the tickets on StubHub and making whatever amount of money they're making on StubHub or any of the secondary market spots. And if they find out, again, I have no idea how they're doing this, but if they find out that you sell all of your tickets year in, year out, they're going to take your tickets from you. We're taking them back. I guess there's got to be some kind of tracer on them, right? It's like a bag of money you steal from the bank and a powder goes off. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things. I assume that if you sell them on StubHub, there's some kind of tracker on the tickets they issue you where they can find out if you post them, or they can find out if they've been put on a secondary market, or maybe they're just threatening you and they don't know that, but then maybe I'm thinking they do know that. You know, one of those things? Like they really have no way to track it, but just the fact that they're warning you makes you believe that they believe. You know, I know, you know situation. Maybe they can follow this and maybe I could get in trouble and lose these tickets. I don't know what kind of technology they're using there, but that is the threat. That is another piece of mail that a lot of season ticket holders got this week, that if we find out that you're selling these tickets and you're not going to the games, we're going to find somebody who will go to the games. An interesting subplot the last couple of years for the season ticket holders. Now, I'm not sure. My buddy got that mailer last year. I don't know if he's gotten it this year. He got that mailer last year, and then he actually, I think, did go to some games this year. And I don't know if that was a part of it or not, but did go to some games, so that should get you off the hook. The feeling among season ticket holders is if you are getting this threat in the mail, that if you just go to a game or two and you sell the other 4 or 5 games, you should be fine, but you have to go to a few. You have to go to a few for them to get them off of your back. I don't know that he got a letter like that this year, and I don't know what the follow-through is. I have not, I guess, heard any stories other than just the stories of people getting mail or getting emails about this. I have not yet heard stories of people that actually had their season tickets revoked, so how much follow-through there is here, I don't know. But I always do feel like the last couple of years when this story has come out, it's not a great look. It's just not for a team that is publicly owned and that has fans that literally buy into it, that buy a $400 or $350 piece of parchment paper to own the team. It never feels like a good look that you would go after your season ticket holders for making a little bit of money when you've been raising prices every year too. It just feels like that's not a great look, like a good PR look at the end of the day. But that was news this week too. And the final little bit of Packer news, we had grades come out. It was report card day in the NFL. I did not know that every year, I guess, players are asked to vote on, based on the places they played, what the franchise is like. Are the facilities in the strength center and the rehab department up to par? Is the coach up to par? How are you treated as a player? Is your family treated well? You can assess this from a player perspective. You can assess the franchise based on these things. Well, the reports came out, and they were not great for the Green Bay Packers. Here's the actual report. Quote, the Green Bay Packers fell 14 spots to 21st overall on this year's report card. The steepest year-over-year decline for any team. The drop is driven largely by the decline in ratings for the training room and training staff, which they are renovating right now, which now rank in the bottom third of the league. Players report a lack of space and outdated recovery equipment, along with a lack of communication and trust in the training room. These issues are a top priority players identified to be addressed. Additionally, players report that the team does not provide game day childcare, as most teams do, contributing to their bottom third ranking for treatment of families. The team's nutrition program similarly ranks near the bottom, with players wanting improved nutrition plans and more nutritious food options to better support these plans. Head coach Matt LaFleur dropped a full letter grade this season and ranked second to last in the league in respect for the players. Now, the grades actually do come out. That reads terribly, clearly. When you read that out loud, or if you're just hearing that for the first time, you think, woof, that feels like a Dean Warmer 0.0.
Mr. Blutowski.
Mr. LaFleur.
0.0.
So is that the fat, drunk, and stupid line? Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son.
Mr. Blutowski. 0.0.
When you read the phrasing of that out loud, it is not great. But then a few hours after that news report came out, they released the actual report cards, and Matt LaFleur got an A-. So a lot of people are just getting A's across the board, and it seems like the Packers got some A-minuses and B's. When you actually see the grades, and I think we're on public school grading system here, not private school grading system. Anybody go to a private school? Anybody grow up and go to a parochial school? Anybody go to a school where when you got a 94 out of 100, let me repeat, when you got a 94, it was a B+. I'll never forget, I went to Catholic school, elementary, middle school, and that was, honest to God, that was the grading scale. 98 to 100 was an A, 96 to 98 was an A-, 94 to 96 was a B. It was insane. The standards were very high. Then I went to North for high school, public school, and let me tell you, when you go from parochial to public school grading, where a 60 is a C+, I thought, oh my God, this is unbelievable. We could cruise through this next 4 years. Now, I'm not sure on the report card for the NFL what kind of grading scale we're on. I'm assuming a public school grading scale. But when you see the actual grades, it's not nearly as devastating or as rousing of an indictment as what I just read you. Now, like the Packers attacking their fan base for their season ticket holders, it's still not a great look to read that. And I do wonder if somebody's going to bring that up to Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur has got a lot of questions he's going to get asked at that first press conference he does. Whether or not that is before the draft, after the draft, at OTAs in May, there are a lot of things he is going to have to button up. Maybe there's an AI Matt LaFleur that he can have that's going to answer those questions. Can he chat GPT his way through this? As I feel like a lot of people are just in general. Can I get an email auto answer here? But there are going to be a lot of questions. The Bisaccia one will be first, but there is a possibility, based on the way that reads, that one of the reporters is going to ask them about that. They are actually actively upgrading the training facilities right now. You would think that would improve the grade there. But the biggest thing that stuck out to me was that last part. Matt LaFleur dropped a full letter grade this season, so he went from, an A+ to an A- or a B+, ranking second to last in the league in respect for players. That's not great. That Dean Warmer quote is the first thing that popped into my head. Mr. Blutowski. All right, I think that's all the NFL stuff. Combine wraps up on Sunday, and then, we're about a month away from the draft, and no first-round pick for the Packers with the Micah Parsons trade. Maybe they trade their way back into it. Sometimes I say things. Let's talk about, should we go basketball, then we'll end on baseball? Let's go basketball. The Bucks, I don't know what the hell we're doing here. This is the Costanza, and I know this is the Godfather, but
every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Is that Godfather 3? Is that the only quote from Godfather 3 that's worth anything?
Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
As we've been over a lot on this podcast, on the air, on the different crossovers I do on the morning show when we talk about the Bucks and what happened with the Bucks last night and what does this mean for the future, I have never been more confused than I am with this version of the Milwaukee Bucks. You win 4 of your first 5 games. Giannis is on national TV beating the Knicks saying, this is my bleeping city, and that seemed to dispel all of the trade rumors and all of that animosity. And then they're losing, and then the rumors crop up again. Then they lose 9 in a row. They get their break speed off in Boston 2.5 weeks ago. They're 11 games under 500. Giannis is hurt. The trade deadline is a week away, and it just feels like, okay, we're full Panzer mode. We're full tank mode. Then they start winning, and the trade deadline comes and goes, and Giannis is still a Buck, and we're excited about that. But how does the season go then? Are we still trying to lose and get a higher pick? Can you use that pick to put a young building block next to Giannis? Would that convince him to sign the contract extension that only the Bucks can offer him in October? Or do you use the top 10 pick, or hopefully top 5? At that time, we were thinking a top 5-ish pick. Maybe you can use that to trade and bring in another superstar and try this again. It didn't work with Dame. It really hasn't worked with Miles Turner, but maybe there's something else we can do there. Package somebody up with this pick and put a different superstar next to Giannis and see how that works. Well, now they're winning. They have won 8 of their last 10. Now, remember we discussed on Monday, they had beaten a lot of bad teams. They beat a bad Bulls team, a bad Pelicans team, a bad Pacers team. They lost to Orlando. Then they beat Orlando on the road before the All-Star break. Then they beat OKC. Again, no SGA, no Jalen Williams, but the Bucks had no Giannis, no Turner, no Rollins that game, so that's a quality win. They come back from the break and beat the Pelicans again, a last-place team. Got smoked at home on Sunday by a good Raptors team, a team 10 games over 500, the 5 seed in the East. And then on the Monday podcast, I said, you have a lot of home games coming up. You've got Miami on Tuesday, Cleveland on Wednesday, New York on Friday. Then you go to Chicago on Sunday, but then you're back home for 4 more with Boston, Atlanta, Utah, Orlando, 5 more, and Phoenix. 9 of the last 10, or future 10, comboing those up, are at home, but they're against good teams. And with Miami on Tuesday, and Cleveland on Wednesday, and New York on Friday, I posited on the Monday podcast that we may lose all of those games and be right back into tank mode by the time we record a podcast the following Monday. Well, they play Miami on Tuesday, and in a tight game late, Kevin Porter Jr. went off, started a 10-0 run, a 4-point play, a dunk, and they win that game 128-117. Right now, the Heat are the 7 seed in the Eastern Conference. They're 3 or 4 games above 500. The Bucks have not fared well against any team that's at or above 500. So you might, if you're not a Bucks fan, you might say, yeah, Miami's an okay team. They're not a good team, John. But the Bucks have, I think they're 3, well, they're now 4, or I guess 5 now with the Cleveland win. They are something like 5-18 or 19 in their last 24 or 25 games against teams over 500. So yeah, Miami is not a title contender, but that win is one of the better wins of the year. You take that one 128-117. Kevin Porter Jr. had 32. He was tremendous in that game. Jericho Sims off the bench. Ousmane Dieng had a good game on Tuesday. Then you come back on Wednesday. The Cavaliers are in town. They are right now the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. However, with the acquisition of James Harden at the deadline, they are right now the betting favorites to win the Eastern Conference and to represent the East in the NBA Finals. They've got this dynamic backcourt of Harden and Donovan Mitchell, a couple of All-Stars, and probably 2 future Hall of Famers. I think that's a safe bet at this point, even without the postseason success, just based on the numbers. And the NBA Hall of Fame is the easiest one to get into. You've got that backcourt. You've got an athletic and extremely good defensive front court with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And they've got good depth and good shooters. Former Buck Sam Merrill. They've got Dean Wade. Good shooters around a lot of this talent. They are now the betting favorites, I think, at plus 300 or plus 310 to win the East. Now, they didn't play a lot of their guys on Wednesday. They were also coming off of a back-to-back. They also won on Tuesday. So no Harden, no Donovan Mitchell, no Evan Mobley. 3 of their best. Those are their 3 best players. Didn't play any of them on Wednesday. Bucks still without Giannis. And they had to grind it out. Had a 12-point third-quarter lead. Went cold late third quarter, early fourth quarter. Cleveland got back in the game. Tied at 116. It was Kevin Porter Jr. again, knocking down a go-ahead jumper with 20 seconds left. Then Cleveland misfired on the final possession of the game, but it looked like Jared Allen had tipped in the game-tying basket to send it to overtime. But they go to review. The ball's still in his hand. As the light goes off behind the backboard, they reverse it, and the Bucks get a win there. I will grant you, without Mitchell and Harden and Mobley, is it a significant win? Maybe not, but it's still a win. And at this point, with where the Bucks are in the standings, if you are going to make a push, every win matters. So you get the 11-point win against Miami on Tuesday. You just get by Cleveland on Wednesday. But now they've been able to bounce back from that Toronto loss on Sunday. They're 26-31. They've won 8 of their last 10. And you're only a game and a half now out of the play-in tournament, and you are even in the loss column with both Charlotte and Atlanta, who right now are the 9 and 10 seeds in the play-in tournament. We just continue on with this Michael Scott snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap.
Snip, snap, snip, snap. I did. Okay. You've no idea the physical toll the 3 vasectomies have on a person.
That ends up being one of the best episodes of The Office. The first time my wife and I watched The Dinner Party, which was in real time when it was live on TV, that was the most uncomfortable episode of The Office we had ever seen. And at the end of that episode, I thought, I never want to see that episode again. And now, many years later, it is one of my favorite episodes to rewatch.
Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. I did. Okay. You've no idea the physical toll the 3 vasectomies have on a person.
This is what Bucks fans are dealing with right now. Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. Are we winning? Are we tanking? Are we winning? Is Giannis coming back? Does he want to get traded? Now he's staying. Is he going to come back from injury? Are you going to rest him the rest of the year? It has been an odd year, to say the least, to figure out what is the MO of this team. What are the goals of this team? At the beginning of the year, I would say we want to be a playoff team. We still think we can rebuild this around Giannis. We can have a title contending team. Then that clearly wasn't the case. And then we felt like, okay, we're a lottery team. And now that doesn't seem to be the case. At this point, you may as well win. We talked about this on the HBL morning show this morning. You're 26-31. The worst teams in the league that are going to have a top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pick, they have 15 wins. The Indiana Pacers have 15 wins. The Nets have 15 wins. The Kings have 14 wins. The Jazz have 18 wins. The Pelicans 18. So you're already at 26. You're not going to catch those people. Had the Bucks continued with the tank that it looked like they were starting, and had they continued to lose after that Sunday loss in Boston when they were 18-29, if you only win a game or 2 since then you are firmly in the conversation for a top 5 pick come NBA draft lottery time. But now, you've won 8 of 10, you're 26-31, you might be able to make a push to get back to 500. I don't think they're going to hit the over on 43.5. I think we talked about that a few podcasts ago. They still need to go, I would need them to finish 18-7, which actually isn't as bad as it sounded the last time we talked about it. It's gotten a little better since then. I think they've only lost 1 game since then. They would have to go 18-7 to finish 44-38. That is what I need for them to cash the over on the season win ticket. Now, I have thought about, you could put $100 right now on the Bucks to make the playoffs at plus 610. So if they win, if they made the playoffs, not the play-in tournament, the actual playoffs. So you have to be one of the top 8 seeds in the NBA to cash that ticket. But if I were to tack on a $100 bet to the season win total bet I have, if that hit, if they do make the playoffs, that would erase the season win total bet, and I'd just walk away even Steven. Feels like that's a pretty low amount to tack onto that bet to try to rescue it, to try to at least get a hedge on it. But now you are so far removed from the top 5, 6, or 7 tanking teams that you may as well try to win. And at some point, Giannis is coming back, we think. I thought he'd be back by tonight just because now we're a week and a half or 2 weeks removed from the All-Star break. At the All-Star break, he said he felt like 100%. He is practicing with the team. There's the whole New York component there where he really gets up for these games against the Knicks. I thought he'd be back tonight. That does not sound like it's going to be the case. What is the next game? Chicago? He's not going to go on the road. Chicago on Sunday. And maybe he's back for Boston on Monday then, on the second game of a back-to-back. They're on national TV with the Hawks. That Hawks game, all of a sudden, they're one of the teams. They're the 9 seed right now. That Hawks game on Wednesday is kind of a big game for this team if they can at least get another win or two against the Knicks, Bulls, or Boston before that game next week, Wednesday. Yeah, now you may as well try to win. And I don't know what this team has, really. And I wonder how Giannis coming back will impact them. I am not going to give you some kind of absurd take here that I have seen on Twitter because now they've won 8 of 10 without Giannis. You just knew it was as predictable as the sun rising in the morning. You just knew that a bunch of Bucks fans were going to go on Twitter after these wins and say, well, are the Bucks better without Giannis? Do we even want Giannis to come back? Do we want this once-in-a-lifetime Hall of Fame player, alien, to come back? Yes. But I will grant that section of the fan base this. This team right now, the way they've been playing the last 13 games without Giannis, and they're 8-5 over the whole 13 games. They've won 8 of their last 10, but they are 8-5 since Giannis went down with this calf injury. They do seem to be getting an identity where you've got this young backcourt, 25-year-old Kevin Porter Jr., 23-year-old Ryan Rollins. They're both averaging about 20 per. You've got Ousmane Dieng coming off the bench now. Cam Thomas coming off the bench. That has added something. Bobby's actually been pretty good off the bench. And Jericho Sims out of nowhere. Jericho Sims, who was a DNP for most of the first part of the year where he wasn't even getting a minute, all of a sudden he's playing 25, 30 minutes a night, and he is on the floor in the fourth quarter, and Miles Turner is not. The guy that you paid $120 million for, the guy that you stretched out Dame's contract for to bring him in, Miles Turner is not the center on the floor in crunch time, in close games. Jericho Sims has been, and he's been playing really good. He had 11 and 11 on Wednesday. He had 10 rebounds on Tuesday. One of the biggest issues this team has had, which seems crazy when you have Giannis, but one of the biggest issues this team has had is rebounding and getting offensive rebounds, but just rebounds in general. And here comes Jericho Sims. He's not going to hit a mid-range jumper. He's basically a run-and-dunk guy offensively, but he is committing himself to getting on the glass, and it's a breath of fresh air to see a Buck out there fighting for loose balls and fighting for rebounds, and that's why he's on the floor making league minimum as opposed to Miles Turner, who you're paying, $30 million to be here this year. I don't know what's going on with that. So what of this version of the Bucks without Giannis right now? What is going to have to take a back seat when Giannis comes back? Because Giannis does have gravity. When Giannis is on the floor, top 5 player in the world, everything runs through him. And I do wonder if there's going to be a learning curve now that they've played all these games without him and they seem to be winning and finding an identity with this backcourt of Porter Jr. and Rollins. Those guys aren't going to be getting the amount of shots they're getting right now when Giannis comes back because Giannis is going to get 15 shots at least a night. How does that look now? How does this team that's been winning, how do they look as they adapt back to life with Giannis? You would think, Giannis is going to put this team over the top now when he comes back. But there is going to be a learning curve when he comes back because you're going to see Dieng's minutes go down off the bench. You're going to see Jericho Sims' minutes go down just because Giannis is going to play 30 minutes a night. Everything runs through Giannis, and he's going to take 15-plus shots a night. How does the rest of this look around him when he comes back? Now, I don't know. When you look to the offseason, and again, I still think the ceiling on this team is maybe you win a couple play-in tournament games and you get the 8th seed. And you're likely out in the first round in a matchup against the Pistons. But when we look to the offseason now, what do you do with the draft pick you're going to have? Are any of these pieces right now pieces that will be a part of the next version of this team around Giannis? Are you going to sign Kevin Porter Jr. to a long-term extension? He's on a one-year deal. He was good at the end of last year. He signed a one-year deal in the offseason. He's been great again when he's been healthy this year. He is not going to sign another one-year deal this offseason. Will you invest money in him? Ryan Rollins is under contract and manageable, but how are these guys building blocks? Is Kevin Porter Jr., is the backcourt of Porter Jr. and Rollins, is that a backcourt that you build around Giannis on a championship contending team? Not a play-in tournament team, not a bottom-tier playoff team. Is that a backcourt that you can put around Giannis where he is competing for championships again the way he wants to be? Is Ousmane Dieng a part of that? Is Cam Thomas a part of that? Is Kyle Kuzma? Probably not, but are these guys going to stick around? What on this team, when you look to summer, are going to be parts that you sell Giannis and say, hey, we think this team can compete for a top 4 seed and potentially a championship? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that right now. I do know that this team is playing a lot better recently, and at this juncture, with the winning they've been doing, you may as well win now and see what can come of it. They are at home against New York tonight. That is a 7 o'clock tip time. Then they're in Chicago, a tanking. Now, that is a tanking team. The Bulls are a tanking team. At Chicago on Sunday afternoon, a 2:30 tip time there. Now, let's talk quickly about the Badgers. There's not a lot to go over here. Really bad loss. I mean, really bad. I know that take is as cold as ice. That take is Mr. Misty slush that you drink too fast from Dairy Queen. There's nothing hot about that take. They go to Oregon on Wednesday, and I know we complained on Monday about the fact that you have a 10 p.m. start time, and this is what happens when you bring West Coast teams into the Big Ten, and you've got Badger fans trying to keep their eyes open watching this game on Wednesday, and I actually did watch it. I wasn't going to, but then I did. I called a game, then I got home, and the Bucks beat the Cavaliers at the last second, so that got me revved up, and then we're 5 minutes from tip-off at 10 o'clock, so okay, I'll watch the first half of the Badger game, and then the Badgers are up at halftime, 33-30, so okay, let's see what happens in the second half. They go ice cold in the second. As cold as my take was on the loss, that's how cold the Badgers were in the second half. They shoot 33% for the game. Oregon got hot. They scored, 55 points in the second half. And the Ducks win going away. It wasn't even a close game, really. 85-71 loss. This is going to happen. It's college basketball, and this happens all the time with good teams, decent teams, middle-of-the-road teams. Even though the team you're playing, if you're on the road, they're not very good, it is incredibly difficult to win road games in college basketball. And in addition to that, it is incredibly difficult for a Midwest team to go on the road to the West Coast, play a 10 p.m. tip time, and I get it. They've been out there for a while, so they should be acclimated to the time at that point, but their body schedule is off. Their rhythm is off. It is hard to go win a game, even though Oregon going into Wednesday was 10-17, 3-13 in the Big Ten. You lost that game, 3-13. That was their 4th win of the year. But you lost, and they got blown out in the second half. And when you look at the Badgers' schedule, yes, they got blown out by BYU early in the year. They got blown out by Nebraska early in the year. But those teams end up being top 10, top 15, top 20 teams. This is not that. This is, I think, their worst loss of the year. It is easily their worst conference loss of the year. I do not think it damages their tournament resume in terms of getting into the tournament. They are 19-9. They're 11-6 in a brutal conference. They've got Washington on Saturday, so they're still on the West Coast. They stayed all week. They're at Washington on Saturday, home with Maryland for Senior Day, then at Purdue, a top 10 team to wrap up the regular season, then the Big Ten tournament, then the NCAA tournament. As we went over when they got those 2 top 10 wins a couple of weeks ago, I think they could lose out and make the tournament. The road win against Michigan, the road win against Illinois, and the blowout home win against Michigan State, and the fact that they already have 19 wins, that is going to get them in the tournament. The question is, what seed are they going to end up being? And before the game on Wednesday, I kind of felt like if you win this game and you beat a mediocre Washington team, you're probably going to beat Maryland at home on Senior Day. Maybe you lose at Purdue, probably going to lose at Purdue, I think. But that would have gotten them to 22 or 23 wins and maybe a top 4 seed come Big Ten tournament time. They would get the coveted double bye. They'd at least get the 1 bye, maybe the double bye. And at that point, you're maybe talking about a 5 or a 6 seed come NCAA tournament time. Now that you've lost this game, even if you win tomorrow against Washington, which hopefully they will, and you beat Maryland at home, that gets you to 21 wins. Let's say you lose to Purdue, but then you win a couple of Big Ten tournament games. You're probably now looking at an 8 or 9 seed. I would say they're going to be on the 8-9 line, on the high side 7, on the low side 10. But if you don't trip over yourself on Wednesday and you win that game and you end the regular season 22 or 23-7, you might have been able to work your way into a 5, maybe even a 4 seed conversation based on the quality of wins that you have. But that is a really bad loss for the resume. And now it feels like even if you won out, I guess if you beat Purdue in the regular season finale and then you win or you get to the championship game in the Big Ten tournament, maybe you're still in line for a 5 or 6 seed. But now with where they're at, if they just win a couple games, win a Big Ten tournament game, I still think they're probably going to be on that 8 line, that 8-9 line. That was a bad loss on Wednesday. They are at Washington on Saturday afternoon, a 3 o'clock tip time. And then let's wrap up on the Brew crew. Was that all the Badger stuff? Badgers, bad. Let's wrap up on the Brew crew. They got a winning streak. We got our first winning streak, 0-4 in spring training, and they get their first 3-game winning streak. They blew out, who did they blow out? They beat the Rangers yesterday, and they had a blowout win there against the A's, I think, and then some other win. I forget what the schedule is. They're with the White Sox this afternoon. One thing to look at for the Brewers, as we talked about or have talked about this third base situation, what do you do at third now that you've traded Durbin, you traded Monasterio, you traded Siegler, you traded every third baseman you had on the roster? So it's an open competition. As we've been over, Pat Murphy has stood by. Ortiz is the shortstop. Hey, Joey Ortiz got a hit this week with the bases loaded. Let's hope he didn't waste it. Remember, that was the whole thing last year. That was his kryptonite last year. It felt like he came up with 2 outs and the bases loaded every goddamn game, and he could never get a hit. He had like 3 hits. Honestly, I think he was 3 for 32 in those situations. He was up this week with the bases loaded, 2 outs, and he got a hit. But Murphy has said, that's our shortstop, Terang is our second baseman, and we're going to figure out at third. Initially, my feeling was Luis Rengifo, who they just signed, utility infielder, he could project as the opening day third baseman. Jet Williams, who they got in the Freddie Peralta deal, major league ready shortstop. If you're a major league ready shortstop, you can play any position. And if Murphy's not going to rearrange the infield, maybe Jet Williams could play third base. And he has been playing well in Cactus League action. Now, an interesting curveball this week, and I know we're only a week into it here. Tyler Black has re-entered the chat. Going into the 2024 season, Tyler Black was a top 5 prospect in the Brewers system, and he profiled as an infielder, primarily corner infielder, first base or third base. And I think at that time they thought he was going to be a first baseman. And remember, he came up in 2024. He played in 50 games, and he was endearing for 2 reasons. Number one, I don't know who remembers this. I know we blogged about it. When he made his major league debut, his parents were in the stands. And when that happens, typically Sophia Minnaert on the Brewer broadcast will make her way to the stands and talk to mom or dad about how this is the culmination of a dream come true and all the years we spent taking them to the ball field and having to get out of work early to watch games or whatever. And now we're finally here. We're on the big stage. He's in the show. It's a great moment. And they were doing that interview, and as they're doing it, Tyler Black comes up with a huge hit in that game as the interview is going on. That was a viral moment. And then the other thing that endeared Tyler Black to Brewer fans is that if you put a picture of young Paul Molitor next to Tyler Black in their early to mid-20s, they are dead ringers for each other. To the point where, if I were Sophia Minnaert, maybe in that interview I'd say, hey, Mom, were you hanging around this ball club at all in 1982-3? What were you doing in 1983? What were you doing in 83-84? How old is Tyler Black, 22 years old? Let's do the math here. But the fact that he was a top prospect, that really endearing moment where he comes up with a big hit when his parents are getting interviewed, and then when he looks like a dead ringer for Paul Molitor, the second most popular player in franchise history, I think. It's pretty safe to say, right? That was all going well for him. Now, in that year, over 50 games, he hit .220. He knocked in a few runs. He showcased some speed. He's got a really good eye at the plate. That's been a thing that he's had in his back pocket all the way through the minor league system. He's really good at judging balls and strikes and getting on base and taking walks, and that profiles as a Brewer. That is exactly what the Brewers want. Then he got hurt, or I think maybe he didn't make the playoff roster in 24. Then he got hurt, and then he was on and off the field in 25. And he had 8 at-bats at the major league level last year. He had 2 hits. And he's kind of faded. You know, it's one of those things. Being a baseball prospect is a fickle endeavor where going into the 2024 season, you're a top 5 prospect, you're 23 years old, everybody can't wait for your debut. Your debut comes, you kind of middle around that year, then you're hurt, then you fade away, then other prospects come up like Jackson Chourio and other guys, Sal Frelick, and they surpass you and they become these mainstays, and people forget about Tyler Black. you can fade really quickly on that prospect ranking list. And now he's 25 years old, and we're getting a little long in the tooth to be considered a prospect. So what are we? And this week, he has been on fire. He had a triple and a double yesterday. He had a home run, double, single the game before that. He is 8 of his first 11 at the plate. Is that good? He's hitting like 780. That obviously is not sustainable. However, he does appear really comfortable, and he is raking right now. And you wonder if he has recaptured some of that prospect status that he had a couple of years ago. You have this opening at third base. Is he somebody that can put together a tremendous camp and maybe take that spot? But he has really made a name for himself again. And like I said, he had kind of faded like a Marty McFly family picture. He kind of faded away. But with the week he's putting together and the fact that he's a corner infielder and you have an availability, there's a vacancy right now at third base where he would slot in. You wonder if maybe he has put himself back in the mix for that. We got a long way to go. We have a game today. This spring training goes all the way through, obviously, the end of March, and you can either stay hot or get cold, and then maybe somebody else steps up. Who knows? I don't know that Luis Rengifo has taken an at-bat in a game yet. But that has been an interesting subplot from Brewer camp so far. 2 other quick Brewer things. Well, one of them is just a baseball thing. Have you seen the ABS review system videos on Twitter? So, as you know, if you go back to the podcast last year and the blog, I am somebody who wants our robot overlords, and I want them full-time. I want robot strike zones full-time. I have been on record as saying that all year last year. Pull up any podcast from the baseball season where the Brewers got screwed on a ball strike call. I have said over and over and over again, I used to be a traditionalist. I used to be a human error is a part of the game kind of guy. I have flipped completely 180, 360, 180. I have gone complete 180 on that, and now I want robot strike zone. I don't want robots for all of it. I don't want robots at second base or making a call at home plate unless the Brewers lose a big game that way. Until then, I'm not for that. But I do want a robot strike zone. That's what I want because it gets the calls right 100% of the time and it keeps the game moving. We're not there yet, but this year they are implementing a ball strike review system, the ABS review system, the automatic ball strike review system. So that means during the course of a game, a pitcher, a catcher, or a hitter, if they feel like a ball or a strike was called incorrectly, can tap their head or tap their helmet and ask for a review. It gets reviewed, and then the home plate umpire has to say, hey, they're reviewing this, and this turns into a strike. It was a ball, now it's a strike, or it's confirmed a strike, or whatever. And I thought at the end of last year, when this became something they were going to implement this year, and they had used it in spring training the year prior, so there had been some ramp up here. They had been using it in spring training, then it went away for the regular season. Well, now it's staying. And I think it goes where each team gets 2 reviews, but if they get them right, if you keep getting them right, you hang on to the challenges. So you keep those 2. For every one, you could get 8 correct calls in a row. You keep on keeping those challenges. If you lose them, you lose the challenge. That's how they're approaching it this year. Once again, I am asking to not strategize poor officiating. Once again, I am asking for that, but unfortunately, we're not there yet. But when they announced at the end of last year that this is going to be something they're going to use in the regular season this year, I, as a robot overlord guy, thought, yes, this is what I want. All right, at least we're a step closer. Well, I've been seeing videos this week, and this feels really janky, for lack of a better term. There was a run in the Yankees game at spring training. I think they're in the Grapefruit League. There was a run of 4 or 5 pitches in a row that were challenged, and the players got them all right. Everyone was right, so they could keep on doing it. But it made that at-bat feel really slow because now you've got, okay, now we've got to review this and step out of the box and tell the crowd what's going on. Then we've got to wait 8 seconds to find out whether it's a ball or a strike, or 5 seconds. Then we have to announce what happened. Now we get back in the box. And it just felt really disjointed, and I don't like the way that it interrupted the flow of the game. I just want the robot strike zone full time. That's all I want. Please, can we have that? But it feels like this is a step backward. Major League Baseball has done such a good job with the pitch clock, with all of the things they've implemented in the past couple of years to get these game times down from 3 hours, 3 hours and 15 minutes, 3.5 hours. Now the average time of a game is something in the range of 2 hours and 40 minutes, 2 hours and 45 minutes. And they put all this new stuff in knowing they needed to speed the game up for a younger audience, for an audience with a smaller attention span. we need to speed this product up. And they have done a fabulous job of doing that. And basically every decision they've made has helped reduce the time of these games. But now it feels like you're adding something that is going to add to the time of games. This is like if you were on a diet. Let's say you, at some point, you said, you know what, I need to get off of sugar. Sugar is killing me. I'm putting on weight. I can't take it off as quickly as I'm getting older. It is the number one Achilles heel for me. I need to get off sugar. I'm quitting sugar cold turkey. And you do that, and you drop 15 pounds, and everything's great for a couple of years. And then a couple of years down the road, you say, what could one Baby Ruth hurt? What could one Butterfinger hurt? What if during Halloween this year, I just have a couple of mini Snickers bars or mini Milky Ways? Nobody's eating Milky Way, but whatever, you get the point. And then it just leads to, okay, now we're reversing course in the wrong direction. That is what this kind of feels like. You've done such a tremendous job of accelerating the pace of these games, and this review system, while at first I welcomed it, and maybe I still will, maybe this is going to be something where players aren't doing it as often in the regular season. Maybe they're trying to get a feel for it in spring training. I know there are some non-major league umpires that are getting work in spring training. So these are not the top-tier umps. This isn't the Angel Hernandezes of the world. These aren't the top-tier umps. So they might be missing more calls than a regular season MLB ump will miss. What I've seen so far, it just feels like it really disrupts the game, and it is going to add some time to the game when you've made all of these strides to quicken the pace up of a slow game. But that was a story this week. And then the one last thing before we get out for the day was the Jacob Misiorowski tidbit where, did you see the viral video where they had Cooper Pratt? Cooper Pratt is a rising shortstop, one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball. They had Cooper Pratt sitting on home plate with an apple on his head and his back turned to the pitching mound, and they had Jacob Misiorowski on the mound, one of the most erratic guys in the league last year, and they had a video up where Jacob Misiorowski threw a pitch at the apple on Cooper Pratt's head and knocked it clean off, and I'm telling you, I texted my buddies. We work in content. We're on social media all the time. I see 1 million videos a day. I see a ton of bad AI videos, a ton of just terrible, obviously fake videos. This one was pretty seamless. I still believe it's AI or it's two different videos synced up perfectly, but they made it look really clean. And as I told my buddies, if this is the direction AI and these videos are going, where it's harder and harder for me to figure out what's real and what's not real, I may have to opt out of the internet in a couple of years. That might be it for me. That might be it for me on the internet, because that looked incredible, and it went viral, of course, and it got tens of millions of views on Twitter and on TikTok, and maybe Marek Attanasio now with the money made on that can sign another free agent, maybe. But it was one of the coolest videos I think I've seen, even knowing there's no chance that, right? There's no chance your blue chip shortstop prospect is putting himself in danger. They're not putting him in that kind of danger. And I know it's fake, but it looks so real. It's one of the most authentic looking fake videos I've ever seen, if that makes sense. And if they're all going to start to look this good, my brain is going to be in a pretzel. Right now, I still feel really good about my brain's judgment on what's real, what's fake, what's a deep fake. That person didn't really say this, even though they sync their mouth up to say it, all that kind of stuff. But this is one of the best fake videos I have ever seen, and that went viral this week as well. It did remind me of, I didn't get the Super Troopers up. It did remind me of the Super Troopers. That little guy, I wouldn't worry about that little guy. That is the movie reference for that kind of a situation. And that made me want to watch Super Troopers again. But that was a viral video for the Brewers this week. All right, that'll do it for us here. Like I said, really tidy podcast. Longest one we've had in 3 weeks. Save my voice for tonight. We'll see what happens tonight. We'll get back after it on Monday. We'll recap the weekend. Going to be a different podcast schedule next week outside of Monday with the St. Jude Radiothon. Then I'm gone for a week at spring training, so there will not be podcasts there. So we're headed to a little bit of a break here. My feeling is we'll do a shorter podcast on Wednesday, whatever that means, just to get 2 out for next week before I'm gone for a week. And then the NCAA tournament's the week after that, so then I'll be off for that too. It's going to be a big vacation. I did work 7 weeks in a row, folks. 7 weeks. So I've got some downtime coming up that will alter the podcast schedule, but I'm thinking Monday, Wednesday next week with the St. Jude Radiothon on Thursday, Friday for 12 hours a day on B. Have a happy, safe weekend. We'll chat with you Monday.